It started as one of those completely ordinary, unremarkable days when I suddenly decided to deep clean the house, tackling every forgotten corner. After dusting the furniture, my final chore was to crawl under the heavy bed, a dark, cramped space that hadn't been touched in years. I squeezed myself halfway through the dusty gap, reaching for an old cardboard box, when my shoulder slipped awkwardly. Before I could process what was happening, my head wedged tightly against the frame. I was completely, utterly stuck. A wave of frantic panic and deep embarrassment washed over me as I struggled against the wooden slats, but my frantic movements only wedged me deeper. That was the exact moment my stepson and his best friend walked into the bedroom. I braced myself for immediate laughter or a barrage of jokes at my expense. Instead, they both stopped dead in their tracks, exchanging a silent, intense look that I couldn't quite read. I tried to explain my ridiculous situation, but my voice was muffled by the heavy sheets hanging around my face. They didn't laugh, and they didn't immediately pull me out. Instead, a strange, heavy quiet fell over the room. I could feel how incredibly close they were as they knelt down on the carpet. When their hands finally made contact with my shoulders to help guide me out, the sheer physical proximity was overwhelming. Every minor adjustment of their grip felt charged with a sudden, unspoken energy. With one coordinated, firm pull, they finally freed me, and I tumbled directly forward into their arms. For a split second, their hold on me was tight, protective, and surprisingly gentle. The world seemed to stop spinning. We were all suddenly vulnerable, caught in a shared space of intense feelings we had never acknowledged before. They held me a heartbeat longer than necessary, and I felt a spark pass between us that went far beyond the context of a simple rescue. When I finally stood up and stepped back, a deep blush rushed to my cheeks. The air in the room was practically buzzing with electricity. I looked at my stepson and his friend. Their faces showed a complex mix of concern and something much deeper, perhaps curiosity, or a quiet, shared understanding. "Are you okay?" my stepson asked. His voice was steady, but there was a subtle shift in his tone, a new kind of intimacy that hadn't been there before. "Yes, just incredibly embarrassed," I replied, trying to laugh it off. I clearly underestimated how tight of a squeeze that was. My forced laugh did nothing to break the heavy tension lingering between the three of us. His friend, a tall, athletic guy with warm, striking dark eyes, took a slow step forward. "You really gave us a scare for a second," he said softly, a knowing smile playing on his lips. "We thought we'd have to call for backup." That smile sent a sudden flutter straight through my chest, the kind of look that sparks something deep inside you that is impossible to ignore. We spent the next few minutes teasing me about my cleaning obsession to lighten the mood. Their laughter echoed through the room, but beneath the playful banter, the underlying thrill remained. "Let's grab something to eat," my stepson suggested, breaking the lingering silence. "I'm starving after all that drama." As we moved to the kitchen, I could feel their eyes on me, making my heart race. While I busied myself making sandwiches, my thoughts kept drifting back to that moment under the bed, the intoxicating mix of fear, adrenaline, and closeness. Sitting around the dining table didn't cool the rising heat between us. The conversation flowed easily, but every time his friend caught my eye, my breath hitched. The way he looked at me, full of silent admiration, left butterflies fluttering in my stomach. "Do you have any plans for tonight?" his friend asked suddenly, leaning in. I shook my head, my cheeks burning. "Not really, just the usual, watching a show or reading." "What if we make things a little more interesting?" he proposed, a playful glint in his eyes. "We could put on a movie or play some games here. It could be a fun night." I glanced at my stepson, who nodded in agreement, and a rush of spontaneous excitement took over. "Sure, why not?" I said, trying to sound casual despite my racing pulse. As the evening unfolded, we moved to the living room. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation. We settled onto the couch, sitting just a little too close for comfort. Our shoulders brushed, and the physical tension grew as we flipped through movie options. In truth, I wasn't paying any attention to the screen. My focus was entirely on them, on the way they laughed, and the way their eyes kept meeting mine with a promise of something more. Halfway through the film, a sudden jump scare on screen made me gasp. Without thinking, I flinched and turned directly toward his friend. He had already leaned closer. Our faces were only inches apart, and the rest of the room seemed to fade into background noise. "I didn't mean to scare you," he whispered, his voice low, teasing, and incredibly intense. "I'm not scared, I managed to whisper back, my voice barely audible. The heat radiating between us was intoxicating. Every part of me wanted to close the tiny distance left between us, to explore this magnetic pull that had taken over the night. But just as I leaned in a fraction of an inch, my stepson's voice cut through the silence. "Hey, what did I miss?" he asked, looking between us with a hint of suspicion. I quickly pulled back, my heart pounding as I realized how close we had come to crossing a line that would change everything. The rest of the night passed in a blur of heavy silences and stolen glances. When it was finally time for them to leave, a mix of relief and longing washed over me. "Thanks for a great night," I said softly at the doorway. They both smiled, exchanging a quick, knowing look that sent a shiver down my spine. "Anytime," his friend replied, his voice dripping with unspoken invitation. "We definitely need to do this again soon." I locked the door behind them and leaned my back against it, my chest heaving as I tried to process the shift in our dynamic. What had started as a clumsy accident had turned into a thrilling, complicated game. Lying in bed that night, I couldn't escape the memory of their touch and the lingering tension in the air. I knew this was just the beginning of a very complicated, intoxicating journey, and despite the risks to our family dynamic, I couldn't bring myself to walk away from the spark.